begin here. What we'll do is we'll introduce ourselves as judges. Certainly, please introduce yourselves as well. I have a brief statement we kind of go through just to be consistent among the teams, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Any questions on anything up front? Okay, good. Good. So my name is Kevin Harrington. I'm Director of R&D Product Development for Acorn Pharmaceuticals. We're a mid-sized pharmaceutical company in the Midwest. You probably haven't heard of us. If you've taken Sudafed, you've used our product, we make ephedrine. Okay. As well as a variety of other things. Hopefully we'll be making more if I'm doing my job right. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Cavallero. I'm the self-employed business owner of a healthcare.
Miriam Sharman. I left Fox last summer, and now I'm doing small business consulting while I find my next role.
My name is Steve Rose, former U.S. Ambassador, graduate of Loyola Marymount University. Worked for 2 presidents. I have my own business called Claiborne Rhodes and Associates, and we do business development for a variety of clients.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Samantha Coyle, and I'm a computer science major at Texas State University. I'm Tanya Rivera-Brunda, and I'm an international relations major and a French minor, and I'm a senior at Texas State University.
I'm Carrington Tatum. I'm a freshman at Texas State. I major in electronic media with a minor in psychology.
I'm Nathaniel Rodriguez Sosa. I'm a political science major at Texas State. I'm a senior and a minor in philosophy.
Excellent. Pleasure. Okay, so what we'll do is go through the full presentation portion. And so in this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please be sure and be clear about what our identity is in the context of the simulation. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who we are before you begin. You'll have 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion. I'll keep time while we're going along, okay? Describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, your team will be uninterrupted. We will hold our fire, okay? When you're finished, we'll ask questions for about 20 minutes, and during the question and answer session, both you and the judges, we're going to stay in character. We'll sustain the circumstances of simulation throughout. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback. Outside the role playing, we'll make it clear, okay, we've completed that portion, then we'll discuss feedback and any questions, okay? Some important things to keep in mind. The ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your arguments on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any member of the team reading his or her part will also be considered a major mistake. Okay? Although you may use notes. During the presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. Hopefully straightforward. We are ready to begin when you are.
Sync watches or?
I don't need to.
Okay.
We're okay.
Good evening, Facebook Board of Directors. My name is Samantha Coyle, and we are a third-party consultant firm called in by you to address the current ethical issues facing Silicon Valley, specifically harassment, exclusion, and work-life balance. We propose the implementation of the Dynamic Benefits Network, or DBN for short, as a solution to these problems. The Dynamic Benefits Network is an innovative program consisting of a 3-pronged interlocking approach of mentorship, education, and transparency that will help bring the culture of Facebook more in line with their stated core values. So you may be wondering what a toxic culture is. Well, it is a systemic workplace harassment and discrimination. The main problem, or the main underlying problem or ethical issue here is the permissive nature of toxic corporate culture to turn a blind eye or condone the culture of workplace sexual harassment and discrimination. So this solution will only work if the leadership is on board. The problems that the DBN will address include the underrepresentation of women and minority groups due to the toxic culture and exclusionary practices. Furthermore, the work-life balance is an issue because employees are expected to work marathon-long hours due to this being part of Silicon Valley's DNA. And employees work really long hours, and this creates a lot of stress because it is a competitive environment. However, this stress goes home and creates a terrible work-life and home-life balance. So there is the issue of the coercive nature of the benefits package at Facebook. So an example of this is in 2014 when the egg freezing benefit was implemented for women. This was a really great idea and had really great intentions behind it. However, it was deemed coercive because it kind of forced women to take this benefit to look good to you and to make work their priority at the cost of creating a family. So Facebook has a lot of really great core values. They focus on what matters most to their employees and have a lot of great benefits. However, with the implementation of the DBN in their company, it would only improve upon the corporation. So, it is no secret that men make up a majority of the tech industry in Silicon Valley. As a reference point, I want to point out that women are about 50% of the population in the United States. Furthermore, about 48% of the workforce is female and 24% of the STEM workforce is female. So clearly there are some inequalities. A recent survey was conducted on women in STEM that showed that 67% of women in STEM have been excluded from social networking opportunities because of their gender, and 87% have been on the receiving end of demeaning comments because of their gender. And surprisingly, 60% of women in STEM have been sexually harassed. An example of this is a female co-founder, Whitney Wolf, who resigned from Tinder because a male co-founder stated that having a female co-founder makes the company a joke and devalues the company. Mind you, this is one example of sexual harassment going on in Silicon Valley, but there are so many more. And this needs to be addressed because the sexism and the sexist culture does not provide an opportunity for women to join into STEM and into this workplace. So Facebook overall has about 4% Hispanic and 2% Black employees, and 73% of their higher positions are filled by white employees. So clearly there is a lack of representation racially, and 16% of their employee base is female. So that means that the rest is male, which again shows a lack of representation gender-wise. So the Dynamic Benefits Network, my colleague Nathan later on will go further into detail the different aspects of it. However, you don't have to worry about changing your infrastructure majorly because it's just going to tweak what you already have, and it's low cost, so it's great. Now that I've introduced the current issues going on in Silicon Valley, my colleague Tanya will explain the legal aspects of our problem. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Tanya Barrera, and I will walk you through the legal aspects of our presentation. As my colleague Sam mentioned, these ethical issues turn into HR problems that turn into legal problems. The Dynamic Benefits Network seeks to reduce those problems by increasing transparency within the corporation and also by reducing workplace discrimination and harassment. This will then lead to a positive chain reaction within the corporation, and it will protect it from the toxic tech industry that surrounds Facebook. Okay. As we know, Facebook holds offices domestically and internationally. Domestically, the DBN, as my colleague mentioned, it's Dynamic Benefits Network abbreviated, stands in full compliance with current existing laws and relevant laws. Additionally, domestically, we follow the federal legal statistics set by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and additionally the EEOC, which as you know stands for Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We are also in full acquiescence with California civil rights laws and employment laws. As I mentioned, we are an international corporation and we hold offices abroad. We hold 11 offices in the European Union, and with our domestic initiatives, we are also in full acquiescence with the European Commission, which governs over those 11 states. Additionally, we're also in acquiescence with each state's domestic laws that run parallel to those of the United States. We also hold offices in the United Kingdom and in Canada. So we are also in acquiescence with the United Kingdom's 2010 Equality Act and with the Canadian Human Rights Act. So our goal for our Dynamic Benefits Network is for Facebook to continue its good legal standing. We want to encourage that it continues to comply with domestic and international laws, but we also want to offer Facebook a transparency program that will allow for a channel of communication between employees and the handling of discrimination and sexual harassment claims through a third-party legal assistance. So I will explain to you what that consists of. A third-party legal assistance will be the equivalent of a relationship that a guarantor, attorney, and benefactor hold, which means the guarantor pays the attorney for its services, and the services are then provided to the beneficiaries. This means that Facebook will have a contract with a third-party legal assistance firm that will provide a service to Facebook's employees in order to educate them on the benefits that Facebook offers. It will also educate them on the how to handle and how to file sexual harassment lawsuits and discrimination lawsuits. And additionally, we're implementing a 3-4 reporting system, which is already, like we've mentioned, it's just tweaking what you already have. So, as you can see over here, our 3-fold reporting system consists of reporting our sexual harassment claims and discriminatory claims via Facebook's Human Resource Department, as well as through the EEOC, as well as through the third-party legal assistant firm. And this does not, this is in compliance, and this allows, as you can see, to work through the 3 agencies, and this provides more eyes to look into the problem and try to find a solution to what the company is facing. Okay, so as we know, there are current examples of what the mishandling of sexual harassment and discrimination claims can do to companies. Excuse me, okay. So an example is Uber. As we know, in an LA Times article, and former Uber employee Susan Fowler she blogged that she had been sexually harassed by her manager while working at Uber, and she took her claim to Uber's HR department. And while she was doing the process, she discovered that other female coworkers had been also sexually harassed, some of them by the same manager, and Uber did nothing to prevent it. As a matter of fact, the severity of the situation reached to the point where Uber had to ask former Attorney General Eric Holden to develop an investigation to figure out where the problem led. And this obviously now relates the image of Uber to mishandling sexual harassment claims, and the women don't feel like their voices are being heard within their company. Furthermore, we have racial disparity within Uber. Last year, Uber released its demographics that made up, as you can see, 70% of its U.S. leadership is held by white males. U.S. employees in the United States, and let this be known, Uber's employees do not account for their drivers. Their drivers are considered independent contractors. So we're talking about the technology, their corporate offices. 40% of them are white, 31% of them are Asians, 9% are African American, and 6% are Latino. So there's obviously a racial disparity within the corporation. Turning to Fox News, as we know, there have been multiple sexual harassment claims filed towards Roger Ailes. And the severity of the situation is to the point where Roger Ailes had multiple sexual harassment claims made against him, and he settled these lawsuits with company money without telling their shareholders. So that creates an ethical concern because as an agent of the company, he's solving these problems. Additionally, we know Bill O'Reilly has so far settled 5 sexual harassment lawsuits that have added up to $13 million. When this came out, not so long ago, I believe it was a couple of weeks, 9 advertisement companies pulled out of his show, and 14 of them completely asked to be relocated to another show. And as of yesterday, Bill O'Reilly is no longer part of the Fox Corporation. So, by implementing our initiatives of using a transparency method that will educate our employees, your employees, on how to file a sexual harassment lawsuit, how to fight and discover a way to go through discrimination, we will create channel flows of communication, and it will allow for any kind of problem to find a solution within the corporation. And as you know, human resource problems turn to legal problems that turn to financial problems. Now my colleague Carrington will carry over and discuss the financial aspects of our presentation.
Thank you, Tanya. In the financial section, we have 2 things that we're primarily concerned with. That's goodwill and employee satisfaction. These 2 factors are dependent on each other, and they have the most leverage over our bottom line. And with that being said, let's first take a look at goodwill. Goodwill is an invaluable asset. You can't put a number on it because it is what allows us to do business with the rest of the world. It's comprised of multiple parts, the first being branding. Branding is how the rest of the world views your corporation. There are plenty of examples of companies that have taken good care of goodwill and supported their branding along the way. There are plenty of companies that you think of respectability and great values, companies like Facebook. However, there are companies that do the opposite, as my colleague Tanya mentioned, Uber and Fox. These brands leave a bad taste in the mouths of some consumers and different associates of the brand. And following that is employee satisfaction. This is especially pertinent for Facebook because Facebook's business model isn't predicated on selling a product to consumers, but more that employees are able to come into work, create innovative features for the user base that will allow advertisers to advertise against the user base. Ad revenue is the lifeblood of Facebook's business model, so it's even more important for Facebook to make sure the employees are satisfied and make sure that connection with the corporation employees is fostered at all times. And lastly, rapport with advertisers. Like I said, ad revenue being the lifeblood of Facebook's business model, it's ever more important that we continue to keep the brand of Facebook something that is good in the eyes of advertisers because they do not want to associate their product with a corporation that is associated with poor values. And if advertisers leave, so does the business model of Facebook. And this then begs the question of legal fees. As my colleague Tanya mentioned, ethical problems become HR problems become legal problems, but in the financial section, we are more concerned with how those legal problems become financial problems. And a company that loses a lawsuit loses money. A company that settles loses money. And a company that wins a lawsuit still loses money because there are plenty of additional fees that come with legal action. Actual damages, pecuniary damages, attorney fees, filing fees, discovery costs, all these things add up to millions of dollars, and if allowed to snowball, can take down even the biggest billion-dollar corporation like Facebook. We have examples of companies letting legal problems become financial problems. Fox has spent $13 million settling with these sexual harassment claims. And they now have to replace one of their main personalities on their network, which all could have been avoided had they had a comprehensive system that allowed HR problems to be dealt with effectively, and it would have protected the brand and allowed Fox to use those resources elsewhere. Which leads me to employee satisfaction. There is a high turnover endemic in Silicon Valley. Google has the 3rd worst employee turnover in Silicon Valley. And you might be thinking to yourselves, well, Facebook can't be a part of this issue because Facebook offers great benefits like an arcade in the office, free haircuts, free oil changes. But Google offers these similar amenities to their employees on campus, but they're still ranked number 3. So clearly there's no correlation between these amenities and employee turnover. The bigger issue is that these amenities don't make up for the toxic culture of the business, and that then causes employees who are affected by these things to be stifled at work and take that baggage home to their families, and it completely destroys the psyche of the employee, causing them to leave. And this becomes increasingly pertinent in the financial section because we do know that high turnover is expensive. It takes 6 to 9 months of an employee's annual salary to replace them. The most ubiquitous employee at Facebook is a software engineer, and on average they make $160,000. So that's $80,000 to $120,000 to replace that employee. And that doesn't take into account the 2 years that it takes for that employee to work at optimal efficiency, like a seasoned employee would. And so with that, we can see that there's clear incentive for Facebook to ensure that employee tenure is higher, because when an employee has more tenure, they're more productive. You get more productivity out of that employee, and you're not spending the added cost of replacing that employee every 1 to 2 years. And with this all in mind, I think there is a clear concern financially to protect the brand of Facebook and to continue to ensure that employees are able to stay productive at Facebook and continue to be innovative in order to protect the business model of Facebook. I will now hand it to my colleague Nathan, who will discuss the ethical concerns of the Dynamic Benefits Network and go into more detail about its specific facets.
Thank you, Carrington. Like Carrington said, I'm Nathaniel Nathan. I'm going to be here addressing the ethical concerns that are systemic to the tech industry, and that the DBN, the Dynamics Benefit Network, will resolve. So imagine that Facebook is a small society, and like any society, they cannot be governed without justice and fairness. And the tech industry, it's plagued by a lack of diversity, and especially minorities and women, that women are often, like how we showed in the other slides, that they're subject to sexual harassment in the workplace. A lot of the harassment is in fact led because of that lack of diversity. It is necessary to have diversity in the workplace because the different experiences and ideas in the workplace allow for the growth of the employee and the corporation as a whole. Also, another problem that the Silicon Valley has, and Facebook also has been part of this, is the coercive benefits. Like Samantha mentioned before, the implementation of the egg freezing benefit, although it was a good idea to empower women to advance in their career, it also led to people feeling like they had to take advantage of this benefit because it was the will of the company. And in a way, that made the employee lose their autonomy of choosing how they wanted to live their life. The last problem in the Silicon Valley and in Facebook is the poor work-life balance. A lot of the benefits, like mentioned before, that Facebook offers is like the arcade, free oil changes, free haircut, free food on campus are great, and they do provide a more accommodation in the workplace, but they also keep the employee at their station and at the office for longer periods of time. a New York Times article referred to this as being chained to your desk by golden handcuffs, and this is especially problematic because it doesn't. It's not just for the employee. Like the company is not being fair to them by not allowing them to participate in their home life. In order to create a more congenial and diverse environment in the workplace and in the society that is Facebook, we have to maintain the autonomy of our employees and create policy that not only is fair for our employees but also empowers them to grow in the company. Also, as the board of directors and higher ups should act more in a compassionate way and show that they really care for the growth of their employees and invest on them in a compassionate way. The Dynamic Benefits Network is composed, like we mentioned, by a mentorship and education aspect, which ultimately leads to transparency in the company. And this is how it looks. Like the image shows, in the end it's all interconnected because all these problems end up being interconnected. So the mentorship group, its first aspect is a one-on-one pairing of a novice employee with a veteran employee, and this is really helpful to empower the employees by pairing them with somebody either with similar walk of life or similar experience, or also it just gives you get that first-hand experience by seeing somebody, observing how somebody's made it in the company, seeing how the company works with somebody leading you. You're just not left alone in the company. So it increases the opportunity and the fairness for those minorities and women that, in a way, that are constantly left out in the tech companies. Social networking events also promote in a similar manner as the one-on-one, the opportunity of these employees by networking and by allowing them to grow within the company, because we all know that those connections in the life is what ultimately gets us higher up positions. So this is really important to have. And then the dialoguing events that we implemented are intended to promote diversity and also encourage and cultivate respect and dialogue in the company. The dialogue events will be composed mostly of either bringing speakers to serve as moderators in conversations, but the conversations will be related to issues that affect the workplace, such as sexual harassment, racial disparity, and such. This is really important because it fits in the fairness aspect of our ethical framework because it really empowers the individual. So the education program, also, like I said, they're interconnected. It has an aspect of the dialogue events. Facebook already has this in place, but we believe that it's really necessary, so we stress it here, that they provide vouchers for continuing education, professional continuing education, and we think that's really important as a company to to show that they care for the enrichment of the employee. And then the most important aspect of our education is the third party educating on policy and benefits. This actually, it's because it comes from a company that without the conflict of interest, since it's a third party, it actually allows the employee to have choice on how they want to take advantage of the benefits, on how they want to and how they want to live their life, essentially. And it increases their autonomy to do so. So the transparency will come from that. Educating on the policies, having a third-party reporting will create more transparency. And like we show, a more transparent company will avoid a lot of other problems, financial and legal. But it also empowers it makes accountable the higher-ups for the well-being of their company, of their employees, and showing that compassion for their employees, which is, like I mentioned before, necessary to have a congenial and diverse environment. So, Facebook prides themselves for being the social network and for connecting the world. And recently, Mark Zuckerberg released a manifesto in which he committed Facebook to make a positive impact in the world. And because of that bold statement, it is extremely, he has a responsibility not only to the world, but to its employees. To keep that integrity of the company, not only you gotta be able to have the desire of helping the world, but you have to be able to do so in your home, in your small society of Facebook, the corporation of Facebook. And that increases, their responsibility, and Facebook ought to do so for their employees. Thank you.
Okay. My first question is the issue we're addressing here, is it employee satisfaction and work-life balance, A. B, but otherwise is poor hiring practices reflected by a lack of sufficient diversity, or C, an overall broader culture issue, or some combination of the three?
I think I guess they're all interconnected in a way, but it is more the culture. So Silicon Valley has been shown by all these examples that does have a systemic problems that we outline in our presentation, and and Facebook does experience them, such as like with coercive benefits and those examples that we gave. So we believe that in order to actually solve the sexual harassment and all these problems, all these responses to the actual culture and the toxic culture that the employees are in, it had to be an approach that challenge those negative, I guess, aspects and attitudes in the workplace.
Okay. And Nathaniel, in the context of where we are versus where we want to go, in other words, what would comprise a successful, effective, nurturing culture which Facebook apparently strives or should strive to achieve, what does that future culture look like?
It should be more diverse. It should be more accepting, and it should be one that the employee doesn't feel like they have to do anything for the company, but they want to because they know that the company cares for them, that they're respected for their individuality, that they are respected and valued as humans, not just as numbers. And I think that is really important to outline that in the Silicon Valley culture. A lot of the times people are seen more as like productivity numbers, and although that's important for the company, it is shown, philosopher Bob Solomon, which we base part of this, actually argued that an employee that realizes that the company cares for them, genuinely cares for them, will provide more productivity because they will feel happier with the company and the environment around them.
And I would like to add that part of getting to that futuristic view would be the implementing of a third-party legal assistance. The more a company, the more Facebook is willing to show the world what it's made of, its percentages and demographics, how they solve their problems, the more the employees will feel this level of security and proudness of saying, well, we did have a problem, but we solved it. And I, as a minority, or as a recent graduate, or whatever the situation would be, female, whatever it is, you want to be part of this organization, of this company that offers solutions to the problems.
Well, I like the idea of a dynamic benefits network. I like the idea of addressing employee development, employee satisfaction. But as you described the third party, I felt like we're going to give our employees the keys to how to file sexual harassment lawsuits, and we're going to really open ourselves up to a lot of problems, because it doesn't take much for an unhappy person. No matter what we do, we can give them unicorns and 4-hour workdays. If they feel maligned, I don't want to, as a board, I don't want to open ourselves up for that. Now, what I would be interested in is a more comprehensive, education on sexual harassment, what it looks like, so that that's more than, I don't want to tell our employees how to file a lawsuit. And also, our COO, Sheryl Sandberg, she's a pretty powerful woman, and very much a model for what women can do in Silicon Valley. So I don't know if I agree with the work-life balance. Facebook's a very demanding company. A lot of people want to work there, regardless of those churn rates. I think those churn rates speak more to people hopping between all the hot companies. But we have paid maternity leave. I think work-life balance is sort of a different issue than the Uber situation is a little different. I don't know what.
Yeah, I would agree. So my question sort of piggybacks on what you were articulating here. So first of all, I'm curious, why the name Dynamic Benefits Network? What is that? When I hear you say that, when I hear the word benefits, I think of all the things that we're currently giving our employees. So what is the benefit that we're giving, our extra benefit that we're giving our employees here? How does that relate to the problems that we have with sexual harassment, lack of diversity? What's the benefit that you're trying to sell us here in terms of what are we offering to our employees? So that's my first one. I've got another little question after that.
I think, as for the Dynamic Benefits Network, I think the benefit implies that we are giving the employees sort of these tools to shape their environment in one that is fitting for them, that assists their productivity. I think that's where the benefit comes in.
Okay.
But it becomes an even greater benefit to you as the board when you are able to get rid of all of the issues that we discussed in the presentation and able to have employees that are productive, happy to be at Facebook, and plan to be there much, much longer than the status quo. I think that's where the real benefit comes in.
Okay, so that's what your thinking is about using that terminology.
Yes.
Okay, that this isn't another insurance plan that they're going to be choosing. Okay, and then I guess if you could, and this may be a little challenging, but as a board, so we hear all these things. Tell me if you can, in a few words, what is the bottom line in terms of what's the ethical dilemma here?
I think there are three, like I outlined, but mostly I think the ethical dilemma would lie in the fact that people are not being valued necessarily as people, that we are not caring, that the companies such as Facebook and other companies in the Silicon Valley are not necessarily, and I understand that there's a profit that you want to maintain and there's the productivity, but are trying to, I guess, not necessarily care for what happens in the workplace more than the output, but it is what happens in those offices. It is the sexual harassment. It is all those things that we don't like to talk about what causes any problems. Ultimately, with the implementation of this, and I know that's a little bit more than a few words, but I just talk a lot. But with the implementation of this, to answer both questions, we strive to make it more transparent. Increasing the transparency doesn't mean that necessarily people are gonna file a complaint against the company, but it will make it more accountable for people for the higher ups that are committing sexual harassment. It will make it more accountable for those people to take greater measures in battling this behavior in the workplace, because of knowing, hey, like it's like a check within the company. We implemented this. We know that there's a risk that if something does happens in this workplace, the employees are protected and they will file.
They're already protected. There's already a law, especially in California. There's already a lot of, I mean, it's,
Yeah, those are already in place.
Right.
and we already pay dearly when there's a problem.
Well, and to add on, like, the focus here isn't to compensate employees with money and monetary aspects. We want to benefit them in ways that would make them comfortable in the workplace and more welcomed.
And
Given that we're the board, we represent the shareholders. And what was rather curious to me was the fact that we made no mention of our HR department. This is an HR issue, and it would seem to me that what we want to do, and what we would expect our consultants to do, is work with the HR on a policy that the HR department can then be responsible for charges of discrimination. And if we have a policy, now we can take action if there's a charge. Second thing, when you put up a chart that dealt with the demographic information, you also curiously mentioned the EEOC and that kind of stuff, and the Civil Rights Act of '64, Full Employment Act is what it really was. There was no talk about how you changed those numbers, how you were going to change the recruiting process to find more people. So what I would like to understand better is how we change the culture vis-a-vis a policy change, and how we go about recruiting people. And I think the last part would be if there is goals and objectives in our company, that's how people will be compensated and know their value, right?
Sir, and to answer your first question relating to the HR department, by implementing our three-folded report system, we are not diminishing any of the aspects. The whole reason, and it is by law, any problem, any HR problems has to be reported within the company, within the HR company. So our employees will still, Facebook's employees will still make their claims with the HR department to allow for the corporation to start their investigations and solve the problem. But we've been, as I use the example of Uber, that has not always been successful. Fox News, it has not always been successful to just rely on your own corporation, due to CEOs being the ones that produce those sexual harassments, and they're the ones that are abusing and targeting their employees.
So they paid people off at Fox.
Right.
So it's not that it didn't, that those people were paid for their silence.
Right. So,
and that was,
So after implementing...
And Fox made $400 million on...
they don't care about the
bill.
To finish answering your question, sir, after filing your complaint with the Facebook's HR department, you will file with the EEOC and then to the third-party legal. In order that you are filing the motion.
That act's not in our best interest, though.
Right.
And
how, if I may, it does act in your best interest in the matter that we understand you want profit and you want to make money, but we're talking about the image of your ethical image, and you are allowing for your employees to feel respected in your corporation.
And that would be stated in the policy, wouldn't it?
Right, yes.
So why would we need the law firm?
Yeah,
The law firm would
if
be...
people have short memories, like this Uber thing, it may not blow over, but in 6 months, if it's a cheaper ride than Lyft,
Well, if I may, to answer the first question, the third-party legal consulting firm is used to eradicate any conflict of interest, to eradicate the fact that you are offering egg freezing benefits and you're making women feel that they have to freeze their eggs in order for you to keep their job. If a third party tells you these are all the benefits that you have access to, here, if there is a sexual harassment, this is what it is, this is what it consists of, and this is how you're going to go about. And we're here, we are the method by which you will implement, and you will file your complaints and your administrative charges. That is the reason for the third party too.
Okay, but the last question I think for the time being, are we talking about sexual discrimination or racial discrimination?
We're talking about sexual harassment and racial discrimination.
We're talking about both.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I do have something to add. Also, the EEOC, and correct me if I'm wrong, also in the past has dismissed a lot of cases, and which from thousands of cases that get reported, a lot of they get dismissed with no sorts of communication, just dismissed. And with the implementation of the third party, we would have a third party that will be act as that will take care of the beneficiaries, that will be the employees. Also, the cost.
a conflict of interest. I mean, like if we are paying this third party,
But
look,
let's let him finish his point.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the third party actually gets rid of that there's no conflict of interest within the third party, because even though Facebook pays for it, the beneficiary is the employee, meaning that you're giving, like Tanya explained, Facebook is paying for the service, but the ones that are getting the benefit is the employees, and it's stated in their contract that it would be, they don't hold any sort of thing with the corporation, any relation with the corporation. They're paid by the corporation as a benefit, but they're like supporting the employee. Also about the money, because I do understand that they do have a cost. With all the saving, after you implement this, people are not going to want to leave your company, because finally they found a company that they feel like they're taken care of, that they feel like their company is not forcing them to do anything that they don't want to do, and a company that has created policy to be fair to women and to racial minorities. And it not only does that, by increasing the tenureship of employees, you save a lot of money, roughly over $100,000. And not only that, by making them being in an environment that makes them happier, like we argued, that will increase their productivity, giving you better product and more innovative ideas, which results in more money. Ultimately, there is that cost for the implementation, but it benefits you guys, and it benefits the board, it benefits the higher ups, it benefits the employee, and it really creates it amplifies the diversity in the workplace, and it creates a happier environment, and which is necessary. Like, everybody wants to work in a happy environment.
I think fundamentally, for you as the board, I think if it's lawsuits that you don't want to happen, I think it's within your best interest to create a system that is more transparent, because what it does is, because if the status quo were working to where we're not going to have lawsuits because our HR system just shuts it down when it comes through. If the status quo was working, then we wouldn't have issues like Uber, we wouldn't have issues like Fox, we wouldn't have these things happening. But I think rather than trying to block off the lawsuits that come in, why don't we reshape the environment to where those lawsuits are never created, and even, idealistically.
You have a lot more faith in people.
Idealistically, they never happen, but realistically, we can diminish the number of lawsuits that are created from the start, so that way we're kind of cutting the problem off at the source.
Every charge of discrimination does not result in a lawsuit.
This is true.
And to the degree that you have a policy, a stated policy on what to do if you feel that you've been discriminated against, sexually, racially, religiously. The company has the opportunity to right the wrong. And if there is fault found, typically the person who's guilty of this is dealt with. You don't want things to go to the EEOC office, okay? But I think that with regard to the dynamics of the people here, I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit more on how you expand that net for employment. If you only have 2% Black Americans, and we know that there's 123 historically Black colleges, maybe we should be sending people out to those colleges.
I think,
If I may, we are out of time. So it's time for feedback, okay? First of all, a couple of really strong things that I liked. You guys engaged very keenly with the topic. And this is the way you define the problem, and this is often the case within the context of these cases, the success or the level of challenge and complexity is a function of the problem you choose, right off from the start. It's a huge lesson and opportunity just to be aware of. The other is defining your problem in a way that you can manage it within time and the constraints of the resources you have, both time as well as yourselves, is also a critical step in the overall process. In graduate school, particularly in the sciences, one of the things you do with an advisor is you define the problem you're going to research. I cannot stress how important it is you do not try to boil the ocean or solve global warming, and that becomes your thesis. So picking a well-defined, sufficiently narrowly defined topic is critical to managing the resources you have within the team and the time you have to effectively address the problem. So I think in the future there'll be an opportunity, kind of how we started right off. What is the problem we're trying to solve? And define it very narrowly and straightforward in a way that is something you can be successful in addressing, okay? Because I think that was one challenge that you worked very hard at trying to work through, but is inherently brings more and more complexity and consequently, to some large extent, confusion into the process. One thing, a couple of things I really liked about what you mentioned, and that was, I won't distinguish who did it because I probably can't remember, is the issue with Facebook, which again, I agree with you, it's, at the end of the day, it's a culture issue. Okay, the other issues are systemic or reflective or subsets of that culture problem. The culture starts at the top. It is enormously important to understand that. And even though you're in an environment like Silicon Valley where perhaps this element or this cultural dimension is rampant or widespread, that's not an excuse, of course, for allowing that to be the case. It simply further complicates the situation. So culture is a very challenging problem to solve, and it has to start at the top, and it has to start with the board. So talking with us as a board about that topic is the right place to go, and obviously I think in the context of simulation why we're doing that. But just defining it well and effectively making it something you can tackle is proportional to what level of success you'll have in trying to solve the problem. Okay?
I guess we'll just go straight down the line. So I have a couple of things that I'd like to give you feedback on that I hope maybe will help you tomorrow in your shorter presentations. And then I just want to give you some feedback too about just your presentation styles, if that's okay. So the legal part of this, where you started to talk about Uber and Fox News. Too much information, it got really bogged down, it lost the focus off of Facebook, okay? One thing that I felt that you did, and I'm going to say this, don't feel bad about this, because every team that I have ever judged does the same exact thing. You forget who you're talking to. You started off by saying, okay, we're addressing you as the board of directors, and then what I felt like we were getting is sort of a presentation to a general audience. It didn't feel like at some point you completely stopped talking to the board of directors and you were just trying to make your point and make a presentation. So always remember to bring it back to who your audience is, okay? And I guess the same would be true of, there was one point where you were talking about, the legal and financial aspects especially, where I was thinking to myself, if I didn't know what your topic was, I wouldn't know, you were just talking too much in generalities. So what I would say is relate it back to Facebook. Give specific examples to your board about, okay, in your company, this has happened, and this is how we're going to change this, okay? And then in terms of presentation style, and I know this is really tough, and I applaud you because this is absolutely nerve-wracking. Even professionals who have been doing this for years, when you get up in front of an audience and make a presentation, it's really difficult. I felt at times, and this might have not been true at all, I think your information was really great. I felt sometimes that you had memorized your scripts, and that what I would suggest to you is, and that again, that may or may not be true, that you did or didn't memorize it, but make it like you're telling a story. Okay? That's a much more effective way of a presentation rather than trying to, in your head, go through all the bullet points that you think you need to hit, right? And also, and I'll be the first one to say, I talk with my hands a lot too. It's just what I am. When you're up there making a presentation, really try hard not to do that. It's very distracting to your listeners, okay? I know part of it is nerves. I know part of it is just some of us talk with our hands. So if you can find a comfortable position to stay in, not that you have to stand still, but just try to minimize the fidgeting a little bit. Okay? But otherwise, you guys do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Again, a good job. Also, the presentation, well, there were parts that were bogged down. Overall, the PowerPoint wasn't drowning in information, and I appreciate that, and I think that's good. To add a bit to what she said on the presentation style, it is hard to remember that we're doing a role play, but one thing that might help is I noticed I'm handing to my colleague, be informal, Carrington, come up and talk about legal, just make it a little bit, and that will relax you because that's where you you can feel that you're working through the script. Also, I think that the sitting down didn't work. So I've watched there was a lot of distraction between the handoff, and I think standing to the left I've seen other teams do that today, and that's been a lot more effective in terms of handing off. And to the substance of the presentation a little bit, and I obviously took issue, to not acknowledge Sheryl Sandberg's role when you're talking about diversity, and she very publicly grieved when her husband died. I mean, there's been so much. She's turned that into a whole thing at Facebook. She has her whole lean-in culture. So you're addressing the Facebook board, and you want to acknowledge these are the things you're doing, but here's where you're falling short. And you started to hit on it with the mentorship and the social networking and some of that. And I think that's a more positive message to the board than let's help our employees get educated on lawsuits. And I think that would be the direction I would pivot as you look at this real issue of work-life balance. And I would probably lose the whole slide about churn because you cannot, I don't personally think you can extrapolate a lot from that kind of information. I think you made a big leap in logic about what's happening there in terms of people being happy or unhappy at these companies. You got to be careful. That's just my opinion.
Well, so everybody is shareholders in your presentation. Look, I come from the school that believes that when you're making a presentation, you want to follow the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. Okay? So, as was said earlier, I focus on maybe a couple, three issues. But then I also have solutions. So in the course of your presentation, you want to start off by saying, here's the problem and here's how we're going to solve it. Then you tell people how you're going to solve it. And then at the end, you tell them what you solved. Okay? I got sidetracked when you put up the stuff about the demographics of people and the community and all that stuff. And I was expecting to see some solutions to that. So, but that is a real problem, okay? And if you want to solve that problem, then you got to talk about the role of HR and what they're going to do, because you don't want this thing to go to legal. And what you ultimately want to do is improve the operation of the organization, okay? So all that's tied into your HR department. So I don't know how you can completely redo your presentation, but focus a little bit more on what the board should demand of the organization. That they can change, they have control. But I'm telling you, this is all free of charge.